Through the great work, Mr. Sauer, of you and many others in the states of Louisiana and Missouri, we now know that there was a coordinated campaign of both public and private pressure against the social media platforms. And who did it come from? As you've pointed out, President Biden himself, senior White House staff, Surgeon General Vivek Murthy, Dr. Anthony Fauci, the CDC. They targeted opposing COVID viewpoints. They targeted the viewpoints, folks. If you're watching at home, they volume censored you. They turned you down and they kicked people off the platforms because they said things that went against the administration's narrative.
Take a good look at this room, because what you're about to see is pure political irony on steroids. Democrats spent this hearing lecturing everyone about democracy, free speech, and constitutional values, right up until a Republican started reading the receipts. Suddenly the talking stopped, the objections flew, and the panic set in. A Republican lawmaker calmly peeled back the curtain on censorship, double standards, and a pattern of silencing anyone who dares challenge the approved narrative. No shouting, no theatrics, just facts landing like body blows. And the more evidence that came out, the faster Democrats tried to shut it down. This exchange isn't loud, but it's lethal. It exposes who actually believes in free speech and who only believes in it when they're in control. If you want to see a Republican dismantle the argument without raising his voice, hit like, subscribe, and stay locked in. Let's watch the full clip before the full
President
break.
George W. Bush's victory in 2000 on the House floor.
Yes, it is.
Isn't it true that Democrats objected to President George W. Bush's victory in 2004?
Yes.
I yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Johnson.
I thank the gentlelady. The irony is so thick in the room today that you could cut it with a knife. First of all, the Democrats' sole witness is this gentleman that comes to us from the Constitutional Law Center at Stanford Law School, where less than 2 weeks ago, the dean had to order mandatory training in the First Amendment to faculty and students after her apology for the debacle of them shouting down a Fifth Circuit appellate court judge. Were you present for that event?
No, I was not.
Okay. Well, and you just told us that we basically, the media networks need to censor viewpoints they disagree with. It's unbelievable. The other irony is that our Louisiana Attorney General, Jeff Landry, just explained to us in detail and put on a brilliant presentation with all the evidence pointing out that there is literally a censorship enterprise now in the Biden administration. And not 5 minutes later, our colleagues over here objected and wanted to strike his testimony as being too objectionable. I mean, we're illustrating the point right here as all of you talk. Many actors in the Biden administration, many of them, have and continue to harass and pressure social media companies to censor COVID-19 content. That's just one of the subcategories here that I wanted to drill down on. That doesn't align with their chosen narrative, because when people talk about the origins or the effectiveness of lockdowns or the mask mandates, et cetera, the benefits of natural immunity, they wanted to censor and silence that, and they did. Through the great work, Mr. Sauer, of you and many others in the states of Louisiana and Missouri, we now know that there was a coordinated campaign of both public and private pressure against the social media platforms. And who did it come from? As you pointed out, President Biden himself, senior White House staff, Surgeon General Vivek Murthy, Dr. Anthony Fauci, the CDC. They targeted opposing COVID viewpoints. They targeted the viewpoints, folks. If you're watching at home, they volume censored you. They turned you down and they kicked people off the platforms because they said things that went against the administration's narrative. One piece of COVID information that President Biden's administration labeled as misinformation was the belief that the virus originated from a lab in China. We now know that is no longer just a theory, it's likely true, as some of the agencies of the government have had to admit now. Dr. Fauci himself was instrumental in contradicting the lab leak discourse from the very beginning of the pandemic. And listen, everybody needs to pay attention to this. He commissioned a research paper to discredit the theory. Can you please share with us what his interest was in covering up the lab leak theory, Mr. Sauer? What do you think about that?
Thank you, Congressman. The evidence in our case indicates that going back to 2011, Dr. Fauci had been a public advocate in favor of gain-of-function research, that starting at least in 2014, NIAID, under his direction, had publicly funded gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and that in early 2020, when the virus was new, he became aware from briefings from his staff and emails from Jeremy Farrar of the Wellcome Institute in the United Kingdom that there was a grave risk that the virus had in fact leaked from that institution where NIAID-funded research on gain-of-function on viruses had been conducted. And you see an elaborate plot, a deceptive plot, to try and discredit that theory at that time.
And NIAID was his agency. When he was asked at a White House briefing about this report that he commissioned, he claimed he was unfamiliar with the authors of the study, even though he was instrumental in every single step of its creation. I have a video, if we can play that real quickly. We'll look at it in his own words. Go ahead. All right, well, they're trying to fix that. What Dr. Fauci says there in his own words is that he has no idea anything about the authors of the study, even though he's the one that orchestrated the whole thing. When he was asked in a deposition about his role in suppressing the lab leak origin theory, among other things, he said, and we have another video, it's not going to work, I'm sure, he said 300-something times that he doesn't recall, he doesn't remember. He isn't the only bad actor. Mr. Sauer, can you please elaborate on the ripple effects of President Biden publicly saying social media companies are killing people by failing to remove COVID information that his party disagrees with?
Evidence indicates that that was a critical watershed in the Biden administration's pressure campaign to attack Facebook in particular, but also social media platforms in 2021. And what you see is these amazing emails right after that July 16, 2021 comment from President Biden that they're killing people, from very senior Facebook, C-suite Facebook executives desperately scrambling to get back in the White House's good graces and assuring them, we will do what you want. We will carry out, quote, what the White House expects of us on misinformation going forward.
It has an incredible effect at chilling the speech of Americans. I yield back.
Now that you've seen it, let's stop pretending this was subtle. This was a demolition. The Republican congressman didn't just make an argument. He exposed an entire censorship operation hiding behind the word misinformation. Democrats brought in a Stanford law witness to lecture about the Constitution while their own university had to order emergency First Amendment training because they couldn't stop students from screaming down a federal judge. You can't make this stuff up. And then the real panic set in. The moment Louisiana's Attorney General laid out hard evidence of a Biden-era censorship enterprise, Democrats immediately tried to strike it from the record. Not debate it, not rebut it, erase it. That tells you everything. When the truth shows up, their first instinct isn't to argue, it's to censor. The Republican side laid it bare. The White House, Fauci, the CDC, the Surgeon General, all leaning on social media companies to silence Americans who question lockdowns, mandates, natural immunity, and yes, the lab leak theory. They didn't just moderate speech, they turned down the volume on millions of Americans. They deplatformed people for being right too early. And the Fauci revelation? That's the part they really don't want you to hear. The man publicly dismissed the lab leak theory while privately knowing there was serious risk it was true. He funded gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute, then helped orchestrate a paper to discredit the very theory that could implicate his own agency. Then, under oath, suddenly he doesn't recall. 300 times. Apparently memory loss is contagious in Washington. The most chilling moment was Biden himself accusing social media companies of killing people. That single sentence sent big tech executives scrambling like interns who forgot coffee orders, promising to do what the White House expects. That's not persuasion, that's coercion. And it worked. Speech was chilled. Debate was crushed. Americans were silenced. The Republican lawmakers didn't raise their voices. They didn't need to. They let the evidence speak, and it screamed. This wasn't about public health. It wasn't about safety. It was about control of information, control of narratives, and control over what you're allowed to question. And today, they got caught with the receipts.